it's open season for data breaches. I don't think South Africans take cybersecurity seriously, to be honest, because the number is increasing. And I think I can reveal here that the decision that we've taken is that a telephone is an electronic communication.
When can we expect regulations around AI and the kind of data involved in that? So let's assume that I work at a company and we've had a breach. How soon should we let you guys know? And what are the processes from us handing that kind of notification to you? What happens in your office? And how long does it take to kind of reach prosecution?
In our law, unlike in other laws, we don't have a time period within which you have to notify us. You have to notify us when it's reasonably practicable for you to do that. Of course, the benchmark internationally is 72 hours. So you have to inform the regulator within 72 hours, and data subjects also. You have to inform them. And you can delay informing us if, for instance, reported the matter to the police, and if you're also in the process of restoring the integrity of your IT systems. But we're looking at 72 hours, even if it's not in the law. Beyond 72 hours, we begin to look at not nicely. So once you have informed us, then we do a risk assessment of what should be done, if at all, and it depends on a number of factors, the number of data subjects that have been affected, and so on. So we can either just note the notification and not take any action, but if it is serious and it has affected a number of data subjects, we can then do an assessment. We come to your office and we do an assessment of whether you are processing personal information in accordance with a POPIA. So that's an own initiative assessment. Alternatively, we can do an own initiative investigation. Now, the outcome of the two is the same, whether we do an assessment or an investigation, because the assessment report is equivalent to an enforcement notice. If we go through the investigation process, we investigate, take the investigation report to the enforcement committee, which is a committee made up of outsiders. They will write a report which they'll then submit to the members of the regulator, and then the members will then issue an enforcement, which cannot be ignored, because the enforcement notice will tell you what action you have to take within what time period. If you don't, then the next step is an infringement notice.
And that's the bad one.
That's the bad one, because the infringement notice can lead up to a fine of up to 10 million rands, or we can give you an option. If you don't want us to fine you, you can elect to be prosecutors. And the maximum sentence is 10 years.
Okay. And then you kind of mentioned the number of data subjects there. Do you prioritize cases as they come in? If there was a case that had, say, 500 data subjects versus 1 million?
Yeah, we prioritize. We look at the impact thereof. With this, if you look at the data breach, we can talk about the Department of Justice because it's in the public domain, because the breach had a big impact. The courts were not working, the master's office was not working, so the impact was huge during the period which they suffered that data breach, and that is what led to us issuing an infringement notice. It's not because we're bad guys. It's just because, our law is not like the GDPR. The GDPR, once they investigate and they find a breach, they fine you immediately. Mm-hmm. In South Africa, after we investigate, we give you an enforcement notice and say, take these steps within this period. If you fail to do that, that's only when we issued an infringement notice. And we issued an infringement notice in the case of the DOJ because they did not respond to the enforcement notice. They just ignored it.
So they found out. They messed around and found out. Okay. So last year we talked about the number of cases that were kind of being reported to you, and I think it was 56 a month was the figure you told us. Has that number changed? And if so, what do you think are the factors behind that?
Oh, it has changed. It's more than 100. I think it's 150 something. If I'm
150 a month.
I think South Africa is, it's open season for data breaches. I don't think South Africans take cybersecurity seriously, to be honest, because the number is increasing, and the hackers have found, a very fertile ground in South Africa. So I don't know what the problem is, but the number is increasing, and data breaches in this country are very serious. They're actually very scary. I mean, if we receive more than 150 notifications a month, that's quite serious.
Yeah. And what sort of numbers, what's the biggest number of subjects, data subjects that you can see?
I think the biggest was the TransUnion,
Okay.
because it involved several wheelings, a couple of minutes of it. Yeah.
Okay. So looking from the outside, I would say your biggest achievement has probably been handing out that notice to the DOJ, showing that you have some teeth. But what from the inside do you think has been the biggest achievement at the Information Regulator for the past sort of 12 months?
I think also then we tend to look at POPIA only because I think it's a new piece of legislation, but I think we've made strides also as far as PAIA is concerned.
Yeah.
We have done a number of assessments in PAIA. We've assessed political parties, we've assessed provincial governments, we have assessed universities. As we speak, we are assessing JSE listed companies to check whether they are compliant with the PAIA. But I think one of the biggest achievement was an enforcement notice that we issued against an organization that collects royalties for musicians.
Okay.
And the royalties were not paid, and a complainant lodged a higher complaint with the company. The company did not respond, and he lodged a complaint with us. We investigated, issued an enforcement notice in which we said release the information. You can imagine here in South Africa, musicians and artists die, very poor as paupers, while companies are holding their royalties. And what was interesting is that after we issued an enforcement notice, then the company said that they were taking us on review. By the way, even Department of Justice taking us on review. That company also said they're taking us on review. But thereafter, all the companies released, including, because we had, I think it was Sampra, we had Galo, we had Grisa, all of them, and released the information to the complainant. So for us, that was a major victory, particularly for musicians. What we're doing at the moment, we're looking at direct marketing, because I think it's a big issue. We are about to complete a guidance note on direct marketing, which we're going to share with everyone to make comments. We'll be putting it on the website. We are finalizing the first complaint that we investigated on direct marketing through unsolicited emails. Because, the big issue in direct marketing, and some of you might have had the interviews that I did last week, is whether a telephone constitutes an electronic communication. If you receive a call from a telemarketer, is that an electronic communication or not? The Act says an electronic communication is communication that is stored in the network or in the recipient's device until it is connected by the recipient. So some people say telephone is not an electronic communication, others say, but we are going to take a decision once and for all. And I think I can reveal here that the decision that we've taken is that a telephone is an electronic communication. So, and as we do that, then telemarketing will then come within, Section 69 of POPIA, because these telephone calls have become such and an inconvenience, annoys everybody, including me. I get lots and lots. But you also have to see the ones that, because you also get these messages through email and through SMS as well. SMS and email, those constitute electronic communication. And people are not aware that the first message that you should get on your SMS, it's the one that asks for your permission to receive marketing messages. And if you say no, then, and they should also in that communication tell you what goods do they intend to market to you and what kind of communication should they use to communicate with you. So once you say, no, don't communicate with me, they should stop, but they don't stop. So I think we've been nice. We've been trying to deal with these issues through, alternative dispute resolution. If you submit a complaint, then we call the company and said, please stop, and then they stop, but they then change the number and call you again. You see a different number. So that's why we've decided that once and for all, we should take this matter to its logical conclusion and investigate these matters. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously the DOJ, the direct marketing companies there on your sites.
Yes.
Last year we mentioned TransUnion, Experian,
Yes.
Discam, and Unisa. Where are we on those cases?
TransUnion is with them to, to give them the right of reply, because once we have finalized the investigation, before we publish the enforcement notice, we submit it to the responsible party in compliance with the laws of natural justice for them to respond. So TransUnion is with them. Discam we finalized, and they have complied 100% with our findings. And then we have Lancet, which we are completing. We have Lancet Laboratories, we have SAO loans, we have lots, we have net florists, we have banks, it's just a lot of assessments that we're doing.
So do you think I don't know how many people work in your office, but do you think you have enough resources to deal with the way that this seems to be growing exponentially?
Definitely not. We have 100 employees, and we are responsible for PAIA and POPIA. And we're investigating people with deep pockets. The private sector, they have deep pockets. But what I have, so the resources are not sufficient, but what I have realized is that the private sector complies because of reputational risk. Because once we do an investigation, we go public with it. So the private sector to comply, the public sector doesn't. So I'm just hoping that going forward, we won't get as many legal challenges, because I think we're spending a lot of money on responsible parties and companies that are challenging our enforcement notice, because an enforcement notice is binding. You can't ignore it.
Sure.
You have to do something. If you don't agree with us, you have to go to court.
Last year we talked about the establishment of a security compromises committee. What would be that committee's focus, and has that been set up yet?
Yes, it's a unit.
Okay.
It's a unit within the POPIA division. It's concentrating exclusively on data breaches because of the number of data breaches that we receive, and they follow the trends, they monitor, look at international best practice, and once a notification has been submitted, it is that unit that decides whether we should close the matter or whether the matter should be referred to the investigations sub-unit or to the compliance sub-unit. So I'm happy to say that it's up and running.
Okay. So you're connected, I think. I think you walk the corridors of power. You're kind of one of those big top-level people. Have you heard when the general election is going to be?
No, and remember, I ran elections for 14 years.
Exactly.
So, no, I don't know. But if I go according to practice, normally elections are held. When I was at the IEC, the period is between May and August, and we used to avoid having elections during winter. When it's dark, when it's cold, because people have to wake up very early to go to the voting station. So my guess is that it'll probably be in May.
Okay. Heard it here first, folks.
It's just a guess, because all perspectives.
So I think the real reason I wanted to kind of bring that up is you said that there's been two issues of concern around the elections. One is the IEC and the political parties that they're confirming that they're going to run with POPIA and comply with POPIA. How ready do you think they are? And then secondly, Craig touched on it, misinformation and disinformation. We've seen how easily it is to fake those videos. What's your office's role in that kind of disinformation in the election?
You see how we come in, disinformation and misinformation impedes the free flow of accurate, dependable information. So that's how we look at it from the access to information point of view. That's the first thing to say. But the second thing, the flip side of the coin, is the POPIA aspect, because political parties have to ensure that they process personal information of voters in accordance with POPIA when they campaign. Mm-hmm. So we are looking at this I think it was towards the 2019 elections, we issued a guidance note on how political parties should process personal information of voters for campaigning purposes. We're going to be updating that guidance note because we want to include in the issues of disinformation and misinformation and how that impedes the free flow of information. And I think what is important, what people are not aware, and I think we are the only ones in the world, we talk about bad things that are happening in portfolios, and these things are very annoying in what now I call teen swallows. in Swallow land. So what we also have to look at is the fact that that in South Africa is, I think, the only country or one of the few where PAIA applies to both private and public bodies.
Okay.
That's why when we did the PAIA assessments, we looked at political parties, because political parties are classified now in PAIA as private bodies, and that went because of the submission that we did in Parliament. But that means that since PAIA applies to private bodies, no one in South Africa is prevented from putting a PAIA request to social media platforms to say, what are your policies on disinformation and misinformation? How do you deal with it? What is your budget for dealing? Anyone can put a PAIA request to these companies, and if they don't respond, that person can come to the regulator to complain. And nothing prevents the regulator, on the other hand, from conducting a PAIA and POPIA assessment on digital platforms. So that is what is very interesting. I mean, we went to a UNESCO meeting where disinformation and misinformation was discussed at the UN level, and when we told the participants that that's what we can do as South Africans, then everybody is looking up to us to see what is it that we're going to use, what is it that we're going to do, to deal with disinformation and misinformation using the legislative instruments that we have.
So mentioning PAIA, how much of your office's workload is on PAIA? And to me, as an IT-focused journalist, POPIA is the kind of one that we always focus our attention on. Is PAIA the kind of the unseen one, or is there actually quite a lot of work coming through to you for that?
I think it's 60-40, 60 PAIA and POPIA and 40 PAIA.
Okay. So then go back to last year. We talked around, you were having individual organizations coming up to you and asking for guidance, and I think you was a focus to try and get stakeholders as a group to kind of engage, and you would engage with them. Has that happened? Have you been dealing with them as a collective rather than as individuals, and how successful has that been?
Yes, because we get inundated with requests for stakeholder engagements, and we have decided to trust that, because otherwise we spend all our time, in meetings talking about PAIA and POPIA. So that's what we've been. But what we have also done, we have introduced a component, included quality Kopan, where we go to the rural areas, to the townships, everywhere to talk to the communities about PAIA and POPIA. And so we are doing that, and that's a fascinating project.
Good. So I think that's kind of brings me to my next point, was what are you actually doing about informing citizens of their rights in terms of POPIA and PAIA? I noticed I think it's the Information Commissioner Office, ICO, something in the UK. They've got like a section on that so that people can go and find out what their rights are with regards to people contact and independent marketing, etc. What's your kind of...
Yes, we do that. That's why I was saying that we also go out with outreach programs. But what is now happening that we have to be careful when we go out to do the stakeholder engagements, especially with the private sector, we say certain things like here. And when we do an assessment or an investigation, then the company comes and said, no, but Tlakula said this at ITWeb, and want to hold me to that. So we are now very careful in terms of, what we say so that we don't come across as giving legal advice on compliance with POPIA, because that is beginning to raise head where people now want to use that and say, no, but you can't say you must do this because Commissioner so-and-so at an event said this and the other thing. So in giving that, in doing that stakeholder management, we have to keep it general as we're keeping it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the US NIST has created the AI Safety Institute. The EU's got the EU AI Act. ChatGPT we discussed briefly last year, but obviously, as Craig said, as we all know, generative AI was kind of big news last year. What work is kind of being done? When can we expect regulations around AI and the kind of data involved in that? And is that your office? Is that another legislative body? Is that kind of collaboration?
It's collaboration, but if we're going to have a law regulation, obviously that's the executive that has to do that. The question is whether we can use POPIA in the meantime to deal with AI and its impact on data privacy. And we think we can. What we are doing now, we've set up an AI reference group in the regulator. And maybe in future, when we do these assessments that I've spoken about, POPIA compliance assessments, we'll build in an AI question into it. In the meantime, while we are waiting to see whether government has an appetite for adopting a law on AI.
Okay. And then kind of related to that, there's facial recognition has been used, or it's used to be questioned in the UK. I know the police forces have tried it there and they're kind of in trouble. The FBI apparently was using Amazon's facial recognition software. Yesterday at the SOGA panels, and the Sufi mentioned that Gauteng's now got, I think it was 8,500 camera network that it's kind of latched onto. What are the POPIA implications around kind of facial recognition, and how do you see that kind of evolving?
I think there are quite significant POPIA implications. We're looking at these roaming cameras that are there, and we need to unpack that to just see, what the POPIA implications are. But we are quite worried about, the surveillance, because that's what it is, surveillance, and we're going to be looking at that. So in conclusion, it's surveillance, direct marketing, is transborder flow of information. Those are the three issues that we are looking at. That's so.
Okay. Advocate Tlakula, that brings me to the end of my questions.